Hello and welcome to the United Views 12 Greats of Christmas. Today we're going to be discussing and celebrating one of Manchester United's greatest ever players, Sir Bobby Charlton. Now, before we talk more about Sir Bobby, let's introduce you to today's panel. And on our panel today, we have got our most intelligent, encyclopedic lineup so far, I reckon. Joining us, we're not going to say ta-ra to him just yet. Hello, Pete Molyneux. Thank you for coming on, mate.
Hi Ben, it's great to be on again. Thanks very much.
No problem, mate. And also, I've got to say a massive hello to this guy. We've been trying to, we tried so hard to get him on, and thankfully he's come on and recorded some shows for us. Mr. Mood Jack, also known as Tony. Tony, thank you for coming on.
You're welcome, Ben.
Now, we're here today to talk about Sir Bobby Charlton. Of course, we'll come to your memories in just a little while. But first of all, we do this fact file and our top three memories. Now, well, he's still a schoolboy, really, wasn't he, Sir Bobby Charlton, when he signed for United at the age of just 15. He went on to become one of the well-known Busby Babes. His opening season would set the stage for the rest of his career. Playing 14 games and scoring 12 goals, Charlton was a lethal striker, even at the early stages of his career. And when you look at his fact file, Charlton played 758 games for United in all competitions. In terms of Premier League appearances for United, he made 606, scoring 199 goals. I wonder if that one extra goal really bugs him, and the fact that he didn't reach 200. Anyway, we'll come on and talk more about Charlton in just a second. Let's start with our memories and our top three. And memory number one is the way he stormed onto the scene. Now, by 1958, in his third season, he was a first team regular. Now, Tony, we'll come to you first. I want to kind of know more about Charlton before he joined the first team. So before he joined up with the first team, was there a massive hype about this boy Charlton?
I think so. In 1952-53, he was playing for England schoolboys, representing Ashington before that in the northeast. And he was the one player that so many people were trying to sign. And, you know, history sort of says he was part of the Milburn family. They were very keen to get him up at Newcastle United as a Geordie. His brother was at Leeds United, and he had an uncle at Leeds United. But he tells a story himself about just being so keen to join United after listening to the 1948 Cup final on the radio. And so when Murphy was able to secure his signature in that first season, straight away in 1953-54, he rushed through the junior teams and moved into the A team pretty quickly. And over the next few seasons was just a prolific goal scorer at junior level before breaking into the reserves in 54, 55, 55, 56. And then as a consequence, he was just such an important part of that reserve team, knocking on the first team door. He just had to be content with the fact that Tommy Taylor was ahead of him, Dennis Viollet was ahead of him, Billy Whelan was ahead of him, perhaps even the likes of Colin Webster, who was perhaps a little bit older. And so there was some frustration from him about why he wasn't getting an opportunity. And there's loads of anecdotes and stories in many of the volumes that have been written about how Jimmy Murphy and Bert Whalley would often pull him to one side and say, you know, look, son, just be patient, you will get your time. And obviously, not being around at the time, I can only assume that his frame or his temperament at the time, they felt he just needed to be held back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, but when he did storm onto the scene, I tell you what, he scored some goals, didn't he? And he was a definite starter within 3 seasons. I mean, you don't see that nowadays. What, at a young age, Pete, made Charlton that certain striker?
Well, I think Ben, first of all, it was his ability to shoot. You know, he'd have a dabble from 30, 35 yards, all across the pitch, the left, the right, the middle. So he had an eye for goal, and in the blink of an eye, that ball could be back in the net. He was also a great passer of the ball, pretty good crosser of the ball, and it was the space he made as well. I've always thought that great players, when they receive the ball, it's almost like time stands still. You know, Beckenbauer was like that, and there's many others, and they have time on the ball to do things. And Charlton was like that. So superb vision as well. But in the early days, because he was a striker and even a winger, I started watching about 63, about halfway through his career, and he'd moved to midfield then, more of a midfield general. And him and Creran ran the show in those days. But of course, in his early days, first of all, he burst on the scene, done well for the team that nearly won the treble in '57, but then survived an air crash. It's remarkable, really, that he would come back from that. And of course, he had a bit of a lull. But I always remember reading something in his testimonial program in '72. Busby wrote an article saying that when all the bad news was coming in, basically about Munich, when he came round, he was so delighted that Bobby Charlton's name was still on the survivors list, and he went on to build the team round Bobby Charlton.
Yeah, and we will come back to that. I mean, that's a massive pivotal moment, wasn't it? I mean, in just the United history. Our memory number 2 for me, I was reading some stuff, I was researching, and I was quite surprised to learn that, of course, Charlton reached 3 FA Cup finals, and that's when he won his FA Cup medal. Now, I want to quickly talk about that to try and get hold of his personality. I mean, he'd already won the league at United, and he'd also reached 2 FA Cup finals before this one, and lost on both occasions. Now, it's hard for a footballer, we hear it all the time, to lose in any game, let alone a cup final. On the third time of asking, Charlton's United side beat Leicester 3-1 at Wembley. Let's come to you first, Tony. Looking at his record in the FA Cup, it looked like a bit of a burden to him, really. He lost 2 finals, 19 goals in 78 games. Now, tell us, what is Charlton like off the pitch? Is he the type of guy to let stuff like that haunt him, or was he always focusing on the next challenge and the next game?
Obviously, I don't know Bobby personally, so a lot of this is anecdotal. From what I've read, and from players I've talked to, like Wilf, Bobby was a life and soul of the party. He was incredibly popular. He was a very buoyant personality, particularly when he was in digs with some of the younger players. I know there was stories and photographs of him being very good friends with Eddie Coleman, and he would often go to trips with Ireland and trips around the northeast and the northwest with Eddie, and Eddie would go to his place and he would go to Eddie for Christmas and stuff like this. So he was very exuberant in that respect. And once Munich had happened, his personality seemed to change, and he became a lot more introspective and a lot more introverted in the way he would engage people. So that psychological effect that Pete said that Busby was really pleased that Charlton had survived Munich, but it certainly left its scars. Having said that, I don't think he was the type of player who would dwell on any defeat. I think some of the things he said in subsequent years is that after Munich, everything sort of paled into significance. So I can't see that he was the type of guy that would let a semi-final defeat. And as you've mentioned, we got to 3 finals. Bobby Charlton also got to 4 or 5 semi-finals throughout the 60s and also in 1970, and we lost all those as well. I just don't think he was the type of professional who would have let those types of things hinder him. And I think when you look at the 1966 World Cup final, when England had conceded a late equaliser, and he helped them then go on to win that. In 1968, United in the European Cup final led in a late equaliser, and he sort of rallied the troops that night again to success and lift the trophy. He doesn't come across as somebody to stop his goals or to stop him achieving whatever he did. I just think he was the ultimate professional. He was a dedicated pro, and that comes across pretty much with everything he does.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, we might have been sitting here now if United hadn't won that FA Cup trophy and going, look, he might have been a little bit gutted that he literally did win everything apart from that FA Cup. I mean, how do you reckon that ranks in terms of what he won? Obviously, he went on to win the World Cup and the European Cup, but, he's everything club-wise. It's the FA Cup, and it's, of course, a big competition. Wembley crowds, like 100,000 people, always turned up in Wembley Stadium for that. What do you reckon his motivation was that game after the 2 defeats?
Well, the first defeat came in his first season, at the end of his first season. So in his first season, he did pick up a league championship winners' medal. Yeah. Lost the FA Cup, and we got to the semi, I think, of the European Cup. So that was a pretty good season, generally, for any English club team. United were the first ones in Europe. So I would have thought he was pretty satisfied at the end of his first season. would have shrugged off fairly quickly the initial disappointment of losing the final to Aston Villa, I think it was. Now, the second season, 58, of course, he'd survived the crash and come back. And United have battled against all odds to get to the final against Bolton. And whilst when we got to the final, I think people hoped to God we would win it. And there was an awful lot of sympathy for United. Our luck ran out, the steam ran out, and Bolton won fairly fair and square on the day, although Lofthouse did bundle Greg into the net. But I think, imagine if you played in 2 cup finals and lost them, but in the middle of that, you'd been in a plane crash and come away with your life. That would have put football in perspective, I think.
Yeah, I think
it had moved on, and the 63 one, Ben, and Tony will know this, was great because Busby was just then starting to recover the team from the crash. It was coming together then with Hurd and Law and Crerand and some of the others done, and within a year or two, it was back on track. So I think he'll have been delighted with the 1963 one because it was a real milestone.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just a few of the trophies we spoke about that he's won. But of course, one of the most important memories about Sir Bobby Charlton is memory number 3 and the part he played after the Munich air disaster. Now, he is Mr. Manchester United. He's still a director of the club, and even at a young age, he showed his love for the club and his love for football. Now, instead of me telling you about what happened after the Munich air disaster, we have 2 of the perfect people to tell you all you need to know. So, Tony, we'll start with you. Of course, he was the first injured survivor to leave hospital. I mean, what part did he play in rebuilding the club?
Well, I think what basically happened was when the stars of the team, if you like, were injured or killed, the fans were really looking for who else would take up the mantle. And of course, you had Harry Gregg, you had Billy Fowkes, but there wasn't really any other star player. Dennis Violet was still recovering from injury. He wasn't back in the team. Ray Wood was recovering from injury. Everyone else was a kid. And Charlton almost had to grow up overnight. And he went back to his family. He didn't want to play football anymore. Murphy went up to the northeast and convinced him to play football again. Funnily enough, I was reading a program the other day where his army team actually forced him to play football because the army didn't give him any time off after the Munich air crash. When he finished his physical recovery, he had to go straight back into the army because in those days, that's what they did. So he actually played army football before he played for United, which is something I've only just recently discovered. So, he was back playing football, albeit under a little bit of duress, but his stature in the club had changed significantly from being one of the juniors to then one of the seniors. And because he could score goals, as Peter's mentioned, and we were lacking in the firing department up front, there was a lot of responsibility laid on him in the early days, somewhat to his detriment, I would believe, because he had a cracking season in 58-9 and 59-60, but his form really deteriorated with the pressure, I think, and perhaps with the aftermath, the scars and the emotional sort of transition of after Munich. He was thrust into the England team. It all happened very, very quickly. And then, as Pete has mentioned, because his form suffered so much, he was actually shifted onto the wing for 3 or 4 seasons. He played on the wing in the 62-63 Cup final because Busby felt that they just wanted to take some pressure off Bobby rather than leading the forward line. Left that to Dennis Law and David Hurd and to some extent Albert Quixel. So there was a lot going on for Bobby in the 2 or 3 years after Munich, where he had to step up to the plate and, as I say, take responsibility that perhaps for an 18-year-old was, really hard to take. But he wore that mantle. He became the leader on the pitch, as Pete said. He became that midfield linchpin. And the mid to late 60s, he proved, what a thoroughbred he really was.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned that, I didn't know about the army football. That's
Yeah.
really that's something we've learned today. It took him less than a month, though, didn't it, Pete, to get back to playing football? The months after, did he change into a leader on the pitch? Did he change into that person, that icon on the pitch everybody would want to take leadership from?
I don't think it happened overnight, Ben. No, because he was still a very young lad, obviously, after the crash. As Tony said, there was a lot of emotional stuff he had to come through. I think it built up over the next 5 years from 58, say, to 63, that he became, he became an established international. He was the leader of United midfield then, as I say, and he never attracted the adoration or the adulation that Law and Best got from United fans. But in the mid 60s, he was just revered. He'd become a cult figure in a very quiet way through playing great football for his club and his country. So I don't think he rushed to take on the mantle. I think it evolved over time. They didn't have overnight stars in those days, Ben, I don't think, like we do today. It's not as instant as the coffee you make. It wasn't then, You had to earn star status over a period of years, especially at Old Trafford. But there's no doubt he did rise to the top. I mean, his record at United was phenomenal, whichever way you look at it. Medals, appearances, goals, as you say. And also, I think I'm right on this, Ben. Tony will correct me if I'm not, but you said he made those 758 appearances, I think, which stood until Giggsy surpassed it in '08. He was only booked once, I think, in all those games. He was a midfield general, but highly respected, and he didn't have to resort to kicking or arguing. And that says something, I think, given what he won and what he achieved.
Well, and also I think it's safe to say that back in the day, obviously you look at the Rooney red card against West Ham, you wouldn't even pick up a yellow card for that back in Charlton's day. So yeah,
no, probably not.
Yeah. So that probably helped him out as well. But no, what a legend! This guy we talk about is he's Sir Bobby Charlton. He is Mr. Manchester United, and if any player sums up the 12 greats of Christmas, it is definitely this man. Right, panel, it's that time when we come over to you and hear about your Charlton memories. I want to hear about goals and games. Tony, what have you got for us?
I think it's hard to not talk about Bobby and link it to the 1968 European Cup final. He scored the first goal with a header. He was not renowned for his heading ability, although everybody at the club said he could head a ball, but he just wasn't necessarily a striker who headed a ball regularly. But his first goal was a header, a glancing header, and he scored the last goal of the night with a wicked drive into the roof of the net from Brian Kidd Cross. And so I think it was fitting that someone like Bobby would score twice in such a high-profile game, such as the European Cup final. But I think more so for me, I think the last game of his career, and it's a game that no one really remembers, and even to the point where everybody says his last game was at Chelsea in the league. He actually played one further game in the Anglo-Italian Cup, and it's not part of his record. He scored 2 goals against Verona in a 4-1 win at Old Trafford. Sorry, in Verona, and that would have taken his tally to 201 goals. It was an official league competition, but for some reason it's not counted. I still to this day do not understand why. So I just think it's fitting that Bobby went out in a very low-key game with not a lot of hype, in a way that perhaps he would have liked to, and was very reminiscent of his personality, where he could just play his game, score his goals, and very Paul Scholes-esque, just go home at the end of it to his family without all the rah-rah, because I think he was quite embarrassed by all that type of fanfare, if you like. And they're my big 2 memories for Bobby.
So unofficially, he did get 200 goals, over 200 goals. He's just not on the record books. Right, let's go over to you, Pete. What about your Sir Bobby Charlton memories?
Well, Tony was spot on there with his memory of the 2 goals in the European Cup final in '68, and I was lucky enough to be there and see that. And he led the line, not just for United that night, for the team that was playing then, but I think also for the lads that lost their lives in the crash in '58. It was a very emotional night. And I'm also, Tony, you're right about his last game in Verona, that Anglo-Italian Cup match. And I think how fitting. I'm only an ordinary lad from Salford. I'm not really a cultural genius, but I know that Shakespeare wrote a play called The Gentleman of Verona, and how fitting. Bobby Charlton was the Gentleman of Verona in his final game. But his last game on English soil, I was lucky to see. I went to Chelsea with a mate called Jeff Malloy. Went everywhere in those days. About 10 years I went without missing a game. And we got to Chelsea that day, and the United turnstiles were shut where the United fans went in. So me and Jeff went in the shed, which wasn't in those days. You go in the opposing home end, you were sought out. It was very dodgy, but we had to get in. We had to be there to see United and Bobby Charlton's last match. So we were in the shed. We kept ourselves to ourselves, took our scarves off, and just stood there. And all match, it was just bile from Chelsea fans to United, just the usual stuff. And then at the end, when the ref blew his whistle, Bobby Charlton did a bit of an impromptu lap of honour. He was kind of pushed into it, and the players clapped, and the Chelsea players applauded him. And as he came round to the shed, I just thought he was going to get more bile. And everybody, to a man and a woman, just stood there and applauded. And the hairs on the back of my neck just stood on end. And of course, we joined in the applause, and it was the first time all that afternoon, we could show any affection for United. But I saw then that day that Bobby Charlton was just loved by football fans, and I'll never forget that. And I think he was a bit moved by it as well, and in his shy way, kind of moved on, a bit embarrassed and hurriedly. But he got a rousing reception from all sides of that ground that day, especially the real fanatical Chelsea supporters, and that says something.
Wow, I've just had the hairs on the back of my neck stand up after you talking about that. So, sorry, Pete. God. Right, of course, today is all about Sir Bobby Charlton. If you've got any memories like our panel, please make sure you comment in the comment box, subscribe to our channel, and also tweet us at the United View. Today is all about Sir Bobby Charlton between now and 9 p.m. Right, let's do the Sir Bobby quiz, shall we? Guys, if you've got a pen and paper or something likewise to do the quiz, I can tell you that if you've been watching this programme thoroughly, at least 3 of the answers have been revealed in the programme today, which is great. So if you play along at home, make sure you do let us know how you get on. Don't mention the answers, let everyone have a go. And we'll get started, shall we, with the Sir Bobby quiz. Guys, are you ready?
Yep.
All ready to go. Right, here we go. Let's see how you two do. I reckon we're going to get both on 5s today. I reckon both of you will get them all. Right, let's start with question number 1 in the Sir Bobby quiz. In which year did Sir Bobby win the Ballon d'Or? In which year did Sir Bobby win the Ballon d'Or? That's question number 1. We'll move straight on to question number 2. When did Sir Bobby win his first league title with United? It's multiple choice. A, in his second season, B, his third, or C, his first. When did Sir Bobby win his first league title with United first team? A, his second season, B, his third, or C, his first? There we go. Question number 3 then. When did Sir Bobby receive his knighthood? When did Sir Bobby receive his knighthood? That's question number 3. Let's see how you two do with that. I've got actually a good thing to say when we reveal the answer of that one. Let's move on to question number 4. Who was Charlton's final league match for United against? There you go, you're both grinning now, aren't you? Question number 4. Who was Charlton's final league match for United against? You would have heard this in the programme. And let's move on to question number 5. Who famously refused to play in Charlton's testimonial match against Celtic? Question number 5. Who famously refused to play in Charlton's testimonial match against Celtic after a falling out with Charlton? Pete, you was in the land of thought then, I saw.
Sorry?
You was in the land of thought then. I could see you was having a proper think about that.
Yeah, I've got 2 names, but I'll have to toss a coin, I think.
Yeah, heads or tails. There we go then, that's the Charlton quiz. If you're playing along at home and you're playing against someone you don't want to know the answers just yet, please press pause. If you've stayed with us, then I expect you want to know who's done the best in our Sir Bobby quiz and to see how you've done at home as well. Right, guys, we'll start with question number 1 and we'll come to you first, Pete. In which year did Sir Bobby win the Ballon d'Or?
66, I think, Ben.
Tony?
1966.
I've got 66, yep.
Yep, it was 1966, which was also the World Cup winning season as well.
He won the World Cup, the Ballon d'Or, and also the English Footballer of the Year all in the same season.
There we go. Here we go. Question number 2. When did Sir Bobby win his first league title with United? It was multiple choice. That is for the first team. A, his second season, B, his third, or C, his first. Tony, what did you go with?
I've got 56-57. That was his first season.
Pete?
Yeah, C for me.
Yep, it is C first, and it was his 56th season. So, yep, the first season he played for United first team. Question number 3. When did Sir Bobby receive his knighthood? Pete, what did you scribble down?
I think it was when we won our first double, 1994.
Tony?
I've got 1994.
It was 1994. Now, guys, how about this to make you feel old? When Sir Bobby received his knighthood, I wasn't born. I believe. When did he get his knighthood? Because I was born in the October, and wasn't he given it in the September? I'm not 100% sure.
Do we get an extra point for this one, Ben?
I'm not sure. No, sorry, no extra points. But yeah, however, from what I know, I was born in October '94, and he received his knighthood before. Well, actually, might have even been the start of the year. There we go.
I think they give them out in January and June, don't they?
Yeah.
Ben? I think so. Yeah, you've probably before you were born.
Before I was born. There we go.
We feel old.
Right, let's move on to question number 4. Who was Charlton's final match, league match for United against? Who did we start with last time? We started with Pete. So Tony.
Chelsea away.
How about you, Pete?
Yeah, Chelsea.
Yeah, it was Chelsea. So we're on 4-all at the moment. Moving on to the final question. Question number 5. Who famously refused to play in Charlton's testimonial match against Celtic? Now, Pete, you said you had 2 names. Which name did you go with?
Right. Only because I can't believe the name. One of the names I can't believe he'd refused to play. But although they didn't get on great, I'm going to go for his brother Jack.
Okay, Tony, who did you go with?
I've gone with George Best.
At that time, George Best wasn't talking to Sir Bobby, but neither would Dennis Law. They had all fallen out. The Holy Trinity had fallen out. Law played, Best refused. So the answer was George Best.
Oh, well done, Tony.
There we go. Tony's got it spot on, which means it's 5-4, which means Tony picks up the points on this one. Good effort, both of you.
Well done.
Let us know how you did at home, at the United View, or comment in the comment box below. Did you get 5 out of 5? Did you get 4 out of 5? 5 out of 5? Let us know. That's it for today's show. Of course, it's all about Sir Bobby Charlton. Any memories, your quiz results, make sure you get involved at home at the United View and subscribe, because we'll have another show tomorrow. That's all for tonight. Thank you once again to Pete and to Tony. I keep saying tonight, it's today. Thank you very much, guys. And, of course, you can follow on Twitter. Head over to us and they will be posted up. Thank you for watching, and let's have a Sir Bobby Charlton-like day, shall we? Bye for now.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.